All right, how's it going, Algebra 1? Mr. Walker back with you. Today we are going to do factoring both a number and a variable. Before we jump into it, I just have to say, if you hear construction noises in the background, there is some construction going on today, so you might hear a high-pitched buzzing noise or a low-pitched buzzing noise or some hammering even, and I apologize for that. So I'm going to make this as quick as I can, and on that note, we'll go ahead and get started. So over the last couple of days, we've been factoring a number from a binomial. And then yesterday, I believe, we started looking at factoring a variable out of a binomial. Today, we're going to do both at the same time. And I'm going to show you how I do it, the easiest way I know how to do it. We're just going to jump right in with the first example there, 2x squared plus 6x. So here, I'm going to focus on the number first. What is a number that both 2 and 6 share? It's the number 2. Now I also notice that there's an x out there. Both of these numbers have at least one x, right? That little 2 right by the 2x squared, that little 2 means that there's 2 x's. And that 6x means there's just one x there. So I've got 2x, and now I'm going to build my parentheses. When I factor 2x out of 2x squared, I got to ask myself what's left over. In other words, 2x times what gets me 2x squared? Well, if I compare the two, all I notice that between 2x squared and 2x, it's just missing one x, right? So I'm going to put an x in the middle, or not in the middle, in my set of parentheses. When I compare 6x and 2x, I got to ask myself, okay, what do I need to multiply 2x by to get to 6x? And the answer is positive 3. And if you distribute to check, maybe we'll check down here real quick. 2x times x, that gets you 2x squared. 2x times positive 3, that does get you positive 6x. So yeah, we're good. And that's how we factor a number and a variable. Now let's look over here, 4x squared plus 6x. Again, we're asking ourselves, what is the largest number that these two share, the 4 and the 6? And it's not 4. 4 doesn't go into 6, but 2 does. So once again, I've got a 2 right there. And I notice both of them have at least one x. So I'm going to factor out an x as well. So I've got 2x on my outside of the parentheses. And now I need to ask myself, okay, 2x times what gets you 4x squared? Let's look at the numbers first. 2 times what gets you 4? The answer is 2. So 2 times 2 gets you 4. Now we need to look at that x squared. So up here, I've got 2 x's. Right up here, I've got 2 x's. Right down here, I've got 1 x. So I'm just missing an x, right? Hopefully you agree with me anyway. Now we got to ask ourselves, okay, 2x times what over here can get me that minus 6x? And that minus I need to pay attention to. 2 times what gets you negative 6? It's negative 3. Now we need to ask ourselves, do we need to add another x in there? The answer is no. I've only got one x here, and I've only got one x there. So I'm covered. We're all good. And maybe we'll check down here just to make sure. And again, do you have to check every time? No. Does it help? Certainly does. 2x times 2x, that gets you 4x squared. Okay, we're looking good so far. 2x times negative 3 does get you negative 6, exactly where we started. So we're good. So that's factoring a number and a variable. Let's get a little bit more practice. So I've got a 4x squared minus 28. Now we ask ourselves, okay, what's the largest number that goes into both 4 and 28? The answer may or may not surprise you. It's 4. 4 does go into 4, obviously. And if you take 28 divided by 4, you did get a whole number. And you'll see what it is in just a second. Now, both of these have an x. Here's got 2 x's. Here I've got 1. So I can factor out an x as well. So I'm going to start building my parentheses. And I ask myself, 4x times what gets you 4x squared? 4 times what gets you 4, and it's 1. You can put this 1 if you want there. It's not necessary though. Excuse me. X times what gets you x squared? Here I've got 1x, here I've got 2 of them. So I need to put an x there. Now we ask ourselves, 4 times what gets you negative 28? In other words, negative 28 divided by 4 goes right here. And what is negative 28 divided by 4? It's negative 7. Do you need to add another x? No. I've got 1 right outside of the parentheses, and I've got 1 right up there. So that's factored form right there. 4x times 1x minus 7. Again, that 1 in front of the 1x, you can have it there if you want, not necessary though. Now let's look at that next one, 6x squared plus 9x. Let's choose red. I'm feeling red. We ask ourselves, okay, between the 6 and the 9, what number can go into both of them? What's the largest number that can go into both? And we can see that 3 would be the correct answer there. And I've got 2 x's here, I've got 1x here, so that means I can factor out an x as well. Now we build our parentheses, and we ask ourselves, 3 times what gets you 6? Start with the numbers first. That's going to be the easiest for you. 3 times what gets you 6? There's 2. I've got 2 x's up here, and I've got 1x outside of the parenthesis. That means I need to put an x inside the parenthesis right there. Now we ask ourselves, 3 times what gets you 9? And that's a 3. In fact, that's a positive 3. And we don't need to add another x there because I've got 1x right there and I've got 1x up there. So I don't have any extra x's I need to worry about. All right, last 2 problems. Don't let these negatives fool you. And here's what I mean by that. If I look at negative 10 and positive 25, what's the largest number that can go into both? The answer is positive 5. Will it always be positive 5? Not necessarily. It all depends on this symbol right here. If it's positive, I'm going to put a positive number right out here. So here we go. When I take a 5 out, wait, am I missing something? I am. What did I forget? I forgot the x. I'm also going to factor out an x. Hopefully you caught that. So when I factor 5x out of a negative 10x squared, start with the numbers first. 5 times what equals negative 10? It's negative 2. And again, I've got 2 x's here, and I've got 1x right here. That means I need to put another x right there in the parentheses. When I factor 5x from 25, 5 times what is 25? It's a positive 5. And that's factored form right there. Last one, negative 3x squared plus 9x. I'm going to factor out a positive 3x. Hopefully you're starting to see a pattern. With all of these, you're going to factor out an x. So 3 times what gets you negative 3x squared? 3 times what is negative 3? That's a negative 1x. 3 times what is positive 9? That's a positive 3. And we're done. So I'll just let you know today's homework is going to be a quizzes. It's going to be kind of everything that you've seen up until this point. Let me build a new slide. I'm just going to start throwing out some things that you've seen. You're going to be asked to factor stuff like 2x plus 4, which you know that's, or at least hopefully, you're starting to understand. You factor the 2 out there, and that's x plus 2. You'll see stuff like that on there. It'll ask you to factor out a variable like 5x squared plus 4x. It'll ask you to factor out the x, so you're left with 5x plus 4. You'll see some stuff like that on there too. And you'll also see one where you need to factor out just a number, but out of something that has 3 terms in it. So if you see something like, I don't know, 8x squared plus 6x plus 2, you'll see that you'll need to factor out the 2 because they're all even. And you'll be left with 4x squared plus 3x plus 1. You'll be asked to factor some stuff like that as well. Now, the quizzes is set to expire next Monday at 1 o'clock at the next class time that we meet. However, you can play it as many times as you want. I'm going to put this in the directions too. I'd like for you to get at least 60%. That's 6 out of the 10 questions. You got to get 6 out of them correct, and then you'll be good to go. And we can tell. So anyway, if you've got questions, let me know. Otherwise, we will talk to you later.